Well, normally I start these conversations, my man, by talking about evolution of race consciousness. I like to get a feeling for how people learned about the racial hierarchy under which we still operate, and how they, learned their own place within it and other people's place within it. So, why don't you tell me your story about that?
Um, so we kind of covered that a little bit in our pre-chat, and where I began last time is where everything really began for me. I mean, at least my first memory of being aware of racism, not just race, right? Because I mean, kids are picking up on race in kindergarten, and that initial story for me that kind of solidified my first memory was that conversation I had with a friend of mine who was black, and I was friends with both brothers who were part of my little Lake Country Montessori school in Minneapolis. I think it was about 300 kids in the whole school, so it's pretty tight knit. And so I had, several years with both brothers or each brother one at a time. They never put both brothers in the same classroom, but since it was staggered ages or age cohorts, um, first, second, and third grade, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, and kindergarten, we had a lot of time. Um,
That's a
to
that's a little interesting nugget you dropped in there about the fact that they never put them in the same class.
Yeah, I don't know what the thinking was behind that. I haven't really thought about it much, but yeah, they were because I think I had Josh as one of my kindergarten classmates, and then Jordan was the younger brother, and he was my classmate in first, second, and third grade, and that's where this conversation took place. Like I don't know if you know Montessori environments, but there's a lot of like chores and things like that. Like you're like doing a lot of like life skills as part of like the communal setting of the classroom. So we would always clean tables and chairs, and we always had drinking cups since we were like washing things and cleaning up, and we were cleaning up together and wiping down this table. And I just remember this activity because I think that was part of like what solidified the memory for me is we're having this conversation, and he's telling me this story about his father, who I mentioned to you previously, but I won't go into details, was someone who was an accomplished black man in America who was the vice president of a very well-known national charity. And he had this experience that he recounted to his young kids for, I'm sure, some good reason, that he had experienced like the cruder forms of racism even at that level of that caliber of professional success, you know, and hearing the N word muttered at him when accepting a major award was a profound experience for him, and I obviously was a profound story for his sons, and it made an impression on me too. And as I reflect back on that story, um, it's like he was having a reckoning himself personally about like this thing that was hurting his father, and that it was there even with all that success, you know, and that was his future too. Do you know what I mean? So there's obviously like a pain in it. That's why he's like telling me this story. Like it's like audacious that this happened to his dad. You know, he's like exasperated. He couldn't believe it, and we barely even we don't really understand the history of that word and all the context behind it. At this point, it's just like wow, this hurts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was raw, and you
Yeah.
guys were young, and he hears that, and I'm sure he was exasperated. I mean, who wouldn't feel exasperation at hearing that happened to your father, and your father's telling you partially because to give you insight into your own life, and that's what you that's the insight, is that you will probably experience this, wherever you go, basically. And so, yeah.
And to be resilient, unfortunately, because
Well,
like
yeah,
why
I mean,
else?
you have to be, right. Like, I mean, you
Yeah.
can be resilient, or you'll fail, you'll fall, so yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was contrasted by the fact that our school was a very idyllic place to grow up. Like, it was the largest Montessori school I've really ever heard of, because like not many Montessori schools go from preschool. Like I started there at 2.5 to by the time I left, they had built the junior high, so 14 years of age. Most most Montessori schools are, maybe elementary, but most likely just kindergartens. So this was a school that was really unique and very community. The community was core to like the school. So there's lots of activities and field trips um, and really loving relationships with our teachers too. Like our teacher that in this classroom, first to third grade, um, would write us love notes. There'd be post-it notes every morning, and it would just, good morning, and like start your day with this activity because it's like very, Montessori is like very like individual led, but at that age, first, second, and third grade, we get some guidance. So we were just, we were surrounded by hippies. We sang Kumbaya, literally. We literally sang Kumbaya as a school, as classrooms and music class, and all those Pete Seeger songs and Woody Guthrie. So we were, it was a very hippie school, so very idyllic environment, and we were definitely like in fourth, fifth, and sixth learn more of those lessons around, Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement, a little bit more explicit about it, but you can tell it's like still like a very like liberal mainstream education on it too. It wasn't like radical education, but we were learning about race and racism in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade.
My experience was kind of like, and I don't think I've ever talked to anyone about this, but my experience was kind of like I learned about the civil rights movement. I learned about Dr. King and stuff like that even before I went to school. But I learned about it in school too. But I never felt like I was really learning about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have to like, I'm not sure if that's common for other black people or not. I'm not sure like what other black people think about that. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone about that. But like, yeah, I definitely didn't feel like I was like learning about myself from learning about Dr. King and the civil rights movement. I was learning about history and the history of my ancestors, like, yeah, I understood that much, but like there was no real like personal connection there, like the story you were telling about your friend's father, like that story to me would not connect to what I was learning about civil rights really. Like I wouldn't, think about civil rights and then stories about racism or something would come up for me or like injustice. Like it wouldn't happen, even though I was experiencing those things. So like I don't know why that happened, but it's just something that I noticed it within myself, through
You felt
investigation.
disassociated from that period.
That's exactly right. A dissociation that clearly was not natural. Now that I
Right.
understand more, so
Relevance there, right? To that experience, to your experiences to those. Yeah. That's the historical line, right? So
I was wondering, like, did you
yeah,
ever have
that's the thing about
conversations? Like, did your conversations with your friends ever parlay from like we're learning about race and racism in school and X, Y, and Z race and racism thing is something that is happening or I heard happened or this or that?
well, to my recollection, all of that came later, like the education part of it. Like that's why like this was my first education on how racism impacts people and what it looks like in real life. So that was I was in second grade. So I was what, 8, he was 7. It wasn't until 10, 11, and 12 that we started, talking about the I Have a Dream speech and, you know, Selma and that history. And I don't even remember it in detail. I just remember, we covered Martin Luther King Jr. I remember learning about it then. So it started to like build there. It was like, okay, I'm learning about, kind of why we're singing these songs. Like I was raised by people who were probably activists at that time too. Like, a lot of hippies, all liberal, as you would imagine, you know, like my music teacher, amazing guy, vet for peace, Vietnam veteran, total hippie, total hippie. But that was what it was like so special about it. It's like I was just raised in a very loving environment, and so were they. So uh, that was kind of like a shock to the conscience. I could tell, it just, So yeah, it's just that's something that I've reflected a lot on our friendship, even though our friendship is more distant. I'm in touch with Josh, the older brother, on social media and stuff, but I don't really see them anymore unless I run into them by accident. But
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.